I like the fact that we all decided here together that we want to do an outstanding product, and that we actually decided to not only modify a car and make it look nice or something, that we actually rethought the whole idea of restomodding. We don't believe that we do a restomod compared to other restomods. We believe we build a new car here because the efforts we are doing and the engineering and working with high-level companies like Bosch and whatever is a different story, we believe. And yeah, changing the four-door sedan out of the 80s into a very good driving machine, that is the overall idea around the project, and that's actually what fascinates me a lot here.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. I'm Sam Moores, and with me today I have Gordian Von Schöning. Hello.
Hello, Sam. Good to talk to you.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell the listeners a little sort of short summary of who you are and what you do?
So my name is Gordian. I'm an engineer and I work for the company HWA. We are stock market listed, and my role here is the CTO. So I'm looking after the technical stuff around an engineering company.
Yeah. Now, where did this sort of journey begin for you? You've been an engineer all the way through, or, where did this sort of start out?
I think so. So kind of started very early when I was little. But I had the chance to actually move to the totally opposite side of Germany. So I'm actually from the north of Hamburg. And being interested in cars and engineering around cars, it was kind of clear I had to move the location. So I came to Stuttgart quite a while ago, almost 18 years now. And I had the chance to start working with Mercedes, AMG, HWA. I also moved to Munich for kind of a while. But I'm here now in the south, working as an engineer for car business.
It sounds like, Stuttgart sounds like a pretty good place to end up if you're into cars. What were you doing? What were you involved with at Mercedes?
Yeah, I think in the first time I actually had a very good chance to have a look into the development of Mercedes engines, ICE engines at that time mainly. And it was kind of interesting because they also did at that time the Formula One engines on their own, in their own company, and it was done all in Stuttgart here. So that was kind of the first job, getting to know the racing division of Formula One engines. I was very happy to have a chance to look into that field, and I was immediately, let's say, infected by Motorsports. And then I found my way into this company here quite soon. I was very happy that somebody told me, hey, there's a company you might not know, but it's very close by. They do a lot of motorsports. I what? Nobody knew that, or nobody told me that. And so I think it's still the fact that not a lot of people know who we are and what we do.
Yeah. I think the first time I'd not heard of HWA until a few years ago. And then we were talking and they were like, oh yeah, but they did. And then they were talking about some of the Mercedes road cars. I think, what was it? SLS Black Series. I think was HWA involved in some of the development of that?
Yes. Also in road cars, starting from the very legend, the CLK GTR, but also CLK DTM, SL65 Black Series. So these kind of special road cars. But our main focus used to be motor racing for Mercedes, and you could say everything beside the Formula One. You can say even the most successful race engine, which is used or still used in the Formula 3, was actually developed here. And there is a lot of those, the best kind of interesting topics to mention here in the company, and we are still the most successful touring car championship, or let's say touring car team. Very, very happy and very proud of what we do and what we have done.
Would you say HWA is an engineering company that also does racing, or?
Correct. So just to explain, actually, HWA was born out of the fact that Mr. Hans Werner Aufrecht, these are the letters where HWA stands for, Mr. Aufrecht is the founder of AMG. He founded AMG in the late 60s together with his friend Melcher in the small city Groß Asbach. So you actually have Aufrecht, Melcher, Groß Asbach. That's AMG. And at some point, the company grew very successful. They were doing motor racing, but mainly they modified road cars based on Mercedes. And at some point, customers and the brand Mercedes was attracted by AMG, and they thought, okay, we have to integrate this into our company, and that was in the late 90s. So the situation changed the company because the company was taken over by a huge company, Mercedes-Benz, at that time Daimler Chrysler. So and in the same moment, Mr. Aufrecht decided, I don't want to retire. He was 60 years old, but he said, I don't want to. And he started this business, HWA, as an independent business again after starting AMG and selling. He started a new business called HWA. And you could say the first years we were more or less only there because we were racing DTM cars. We did a lot of, it all started out with the GT cars out of 98, 99, these cars, that was our base. Then we did DTM in 2000 again. And more or less, we all put the jackets of Mercedes on and we pretended to be Mercedes as that was the plan. And that was okay. And almost 20 years later, we also decided, okay, we have to diversify a little bit. We need also other customers than only one. We had multiple projects with Mercedes where we were very successful. Like just a couple of years ago, we won the Formula E championship twice, actually, with the product we developed and the team and everything. So that's a world championship. So at the end, in a very short time, we are able to adapt to things and then kind of being successful on that. And I can say now that we decided we're going to go more diversify, we also thought about, okay, how can we explain what is our knowledge, what is our project, or let's say what we have done in the past to prove our execution. And then we came up with the idea we have to do our own product.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get onto that, but I want to wind back a little bit. When you joined HWA, what were you involved in?
So, the first time I joined as an engineer working on suspension and working on powertrain components, which are not the engine. At that time, it was kind of divided into, you have an electric department, you have a powertrain department, and the chassis department. And I joined the chassis department, being responsible for powertrain components beside the engine. So gearbox, drivetrain components, drive shafts, prop shaft, these kind of things, clutch. And at some point I got different roles. I was involved into a very nice project within an Australian V8 supercar. And so one thing came to the others, and different position, different roles. And after 9 years almost, I had the chance to actually see another company, which was BMW at that time. Was really interesting as well. But doing almost the same product, being responsible for a DTM car in the development side of chassis, I had the possibility to change the manufacturer and could see how the others are doing it.
And with like DTM, I don't know tons about it, but I always hear that like one of the things, I guess, I don't know whether it's still up to what point, but like technology, the cars were always really trick. Like, is there any things, is that correct? Do they have a lot of interesting technologies on them that you wouldn't see elsewhere?
I would say so. So looking back in the time, in the beginning of the DTM, that was more or less a road car, which being slightly modified or just a little modifications. And then during the time at the end of the 90s, for example, with the ITC, it changed dramatically into something totally crazy, having air spring engines and Formula One technology into a touring car, which also made all the project kind of expensive. But and then at some time this kind of ITC stopped. It started again with 2000 with the new DTM era. Then in 2012 there was a big change from, let's say, tube chassis to monocoque-based chassis. But it was always, let's say, it was always a technology category. It was always driven by technology and engineers. And so also the last section of the DTM, the Class 1, which stopped in 2020, 2020 actually. That was kind of high technology. Nobody knew that the engines and the powertrain was built up to use the minimum of fuel, being very effective and efficient. And it was kind of, I cannot say it was not promoted well, but I think most of the people didn't really knew all the technology behind the category.
In that sort of final period of that, are there any sort of stats or anything to translate how much efficiency / power on size you were getting?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, and I think during the time I was involved in those motor racing, it was not really back and forward out of the racing into serious production or the other way around. Was more or less very specific development for the product in the case of the road car, but also very specific for actually the tenths of the seconds on a race car. Unfortunately, it's not really like you develop something in the racing and then you can just take it and use it for the road cars. There is lots of things we all know have been tested and evaluated in racing and then redeveloped for applications. But to be fair, especially in those touring car categories like DTM with the road cars so specific, there is not that much you can transfer in technology-wise.
Yeah, interesting. Because that is always that thing that everyone always gets said is like, yeah, you go racing, you develop technology, and then you transfer it over. But it sounds like in lots of cases that doesn't necessarily happen.
I mean, there is exchange, don't get me wrong, and it's actually also the reason why you do racing, because you want to win on Sunday and sell on Monday. So sometimes you actually have the difficulties that if you have a problem on the race car and people see that, they're wondering if these problems can also happen in the road car, although the technologies might be very different. We experienced this once or a couple of times. But overall, I think it's a big benefit or beneficial for the road cars to actually have racing and to have competition also in the engineering departments and exchange. The question is, what can you use out of that in detail?
Yeah. It's as a sort of customer of modern sports cars, supercars, I do a little bit of racing, like amateur racing, but I appreciate prototypes and single seaters and stuff like that for sort of what they can do. But equally, when I see AMG GT3 or something, I'm like, that is, I know it's not quite, but like, that's a car that I can see on the street in a race version. And if that's winning, that goes into the back of your mind, even though...
No, definitely. I mean, in those categories like customer racing, we are talking about customer racing having a base car, which you have to use. That's different story. Because what you experience in this car, this could be used also on production cars, which has been done, definitely. Talking about the GT Black Series, the latest version, there is things being taken over out of the race versions, the GT3, the GT2, although those cars. So there is definitely exchange. If the base product is kind of the product what you see on the road and you change it into a race car, there is definitely synergies. If you just have a car which looks like a road car, it's more difficult, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any? Because I know, as you mentioned, some of the cars that HWA have been involved with, lots of the race ones, but then you've also been involved in some of the road cars, like you said, Black Series. What sort of involvement does HWA have in those cars?
Yeah, I think it's also very dependent on what kind of project we are talking about. So, in the past, it was more or less also kind of an idea talking about the CLK DTM, for example. There was the idea of, okay, there is a nice product, the CLK. There is also a V8 version of it. And why shouldn't we push it a little bit more into the direction of a race car, but a street legal car? And so at that time, you could say the managers around the HWA company decided, okay, we're gonna use a CLK, we're gonna convert it with an S-Class engine, which has been done quite often already in this company, and then make it even more powerful, a little bit more racy, but still street legal. That was the idea behind. And at some point, the development started secretly, and at one stage it was shown to Mercedes and to AMG, and they thought, okay, that's kind of a cool idea. Why not bringing it further into something that we can sell? So that was kind of the idea. Same to the SL65. There was also a project kind of started out of the ideas here in the company, moved forward into something which could be presented to Mercedes and to AMG, and then definitely the work and the details, everything was then done also together. It's not just HWA, but it was kind of a back and forward working together. And for sure, we needed to also learn, okay, how can we bring this car to a level where you can hand over to Mercedes clients? And so that has been done together, but the initial idea, the first development, and let's say the ideas around the project were done here. Yeah.
That's quite an interesting relationship. Like, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of another manufacturer that I know of that has done that with some road cars.
Not that I would mention here, I guess. So, yeah, no, I mean, this is kind of a good relation. You see, that's kind of a good relation in between companies, and being also successful in racing together gives definitely also some kind of freedom and some trust. And therefore, these kind of ideas were born. And why not? I mean, at the end, it's kind of, okay, what can we do to satisfy the customers? And at that point, was a very low production number on a special vehicle, and that was more or less developed together and being also produced here in Affalterbach in our company. And then we handed over to Mercedes, and they handed over to customers.
Yeah, it's interesting that the one I keep coming back to this one, but the SLS Black Series. I remember everyone that I know that's driven one and driven SLS. They say it's just a completely different, like, okay, it's similar, but it's like just completely different driving experience.
But here we have to be fair, because this was not done here. So that is definitely an AMG owned product, nothing to do with us. But what could be is that at the same time, or a little bit up front, we developed the SLS GT3 car, which was the first customer racing car of AMG together with AMG. And definitely ideas out of this car and let's say things out of that car were implemented into the idea of the SLS Black Series.
Yeah, and that car was very popular, the SLS GT3.
Definitely, yeah. We together with AMG we sold a lot of cars, and until now there's more than 600 of those customer racing cars being produced and sold to customers. Yeah.
And because you were involved in the development of the SLS GT3, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
When you're developing a car like that is a customer racing car as well as some professional, but mainly a customer racing car, what do you have to do? Do you have to do anything differently to just a straight up pros only?
Definitely. So I think together with AMG, we came up with the ideas of, okay, what has to be done differently? Because we hand over a car to teams which we don't really know. For sure, you know them because they're your customer, but you don't know how they treat the car or they handle the car. You don't know the people who are working. Before that, that was kind of an customer racing. Also in the DTM, there were other teams using the products we have developed in the DTM, but we knew the teams very well. We knew the people. They were under control, let's say. And now that actually it was decided to produce a car which been used on racetracks by people you don't really control, it was definitely a new target of what has to be done on this car differently than upfront on the pure, let's say, works racing cars. So that was a big difference because that's also one big, let's say, development goal is the running cost is how do you handle the car? How can you repair the car? How can other people work with the car? It's completely different to what we have done up before. And that was kind of in 2010 or so, where we started this program. It was new and very challenging. But again, we can say that together with AMG, we have built up the most successful customer racing. And actually, we also are very proud of this product, being part of that.
Yeah. And what sort of things did you have to, what sort of changes might you have to make to keep that, so that you can hand someone a car?
I mean, first of all, I think which is still kind of in the DNA of those cars is that the handling and the drivability is a highest level what you would like to achieve. So because knowing that you might have pro drivers and not really amateurs, but you have like gentleman drivers or people who are not that trained or not racing not that often, let's say it this way, both parties you would like to satisfy, and that's kind of complicated because at some point for the pro driver you can develop in a different way, maybe more aero let's say related on, and you need the drivability. And just to answer your question, right, I think there is lots of things, but looking at the engine, for example, it was clear we have to have a powerful engine with a lot of torque and a lot of, let's say, forgiving. So in a race car, if you misshift or if you're not in the right spec of the RPMs, you're gone. But in the customer racing, you don't want to be in a very sensitive area of the engine all the time and make sure that the driver has to think about this all the time. So that's why the idea was actually we take over the engine, which was a natural aspirated V8. We are still putting this in the current built GT3 cars because it's very reliable. It has a lot of torque, and it's a nice driving behavior for all of them, for the pro drivers, but also for gentleman drivers.
Oh, that's interesting. And I guess in that category, GT3, you have balance of performance. So you're going to get messed with in some way. So choosing where and how your car is quick, I guess, is part of that. That is part of the situation.
That's a big thing at the end. You really have to define what is important for you, what is important for your brand, what do you want to represent, where do you want to win races, these kind of things you all have to put into you have to put them together and see where is actually your topics and where do you want to focus on. Most of the times you would like to cover everything, but that's not possible. So at some point you kind of have to focus on things, and that's what you do. Then you develop the product, and you actually need a lot of people behind that and helping you to work on the BOP and to explain the car and to make it transparent by the sanctioning bodies and these kind of things.
How do you feel about BOP in general?
I think the more you discuss about that, the more complicated it gets, but I think it's kind of necessary. We've seen that in the past when you just open up freedom, unlimited freedom. It's going to be very expensive and dangerous, let's say. That was good in an older time. You could see that is really helping categories.
Yeah.
Too much BOP makes everything complicated, but yeah, I think we are in a century where where BOP can be done in a good way, in a fair way, and can help to make racing fun and make racing a challenge and make racing, let's say, make racing to something we all want to do.
Yeah. It seems to me like in GT3, BOP works quite well. There's a lot of people racing all over the world. It seems to work, like it seems to do the job it does. I think in other categories, maybe WEC, where the rules change kind of often, some people are racing for some of the events and not other events, and the sort of overall championship is not necessarily as important as Le Mans or those sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
It seems to cause a lot more problems. But in GT3, it seems to work quite well.
You could say that because there's so many cars driving around. The more you're driving, the more data you get, the more data you have, the more transparent it gets, and makes it easier for the categories or for the promoters to actually bring a BOP. It's always a discussion, and there is always people and teams and manufacturers who think that is unfair. But I would totally agree. I think on the GT3 cars, having those different concepts on powertrains and overall the car concepts are kind of different. So I think it's a tool that can work and it can be used, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's a pity, to be fair. As an engineer, you would like to not have a BOP. Yeah. While I was talking, I said, I wanted to say I don't want a BOP, but I think it's a fair system which has to be developed still, but to actually make racing make sense.
Yeah, it's tricky. If you're HWA and you love developing race cars, you kind of want to be like, but if we make it faster and it's within the rules, why are we not allowed to be faster?
Sure. And if you make it faster, is going to be stopped by BOP. Then. Yeah, true. But it's other goals then, other things you have to set as a goal and say, okay, this is what we would like to achieve. And then you still have a challenge to achieve that. And
So you were involved in a lot of racing and a lot of development and stuff like that. And then, as you mentioned earlier, at some point in time, HWA said, how can we sort of showcase a little bit more of who we are, what we do? And a road car project appeared.
I mean, you could say that all started kind of in the pandemic, where actually racing also was kind of stopped for a while. In 2020, we actually prepared for a season which should be very successful and growing and bigger market here and there. So a lot of spare parts were purchased, and we were actually waiting in January for, okay, now the season can start. It's going to be big this year. Unfortunately, it was not as big as we expected. And we all know what happened. At some point, racing was totally stopped. And there were no races and all over the globe, which actually was kind of a disaster for us. And then we decided, okay, nobody actually knew at that time what's going to be next year. What do we do? Is that only 1 year? And therefore, we decided, okay, we have to think also into other ideas. And I think you can remember there's lots of engineering companies. They were looking into even health topics and whatever different applications. And at some point we decided, no, we should think about, okay, what is more or less independent of everything. And we focused on the market, which is hypercars and supercars. And we believe there is always a market for these kind of products, because there's people, whatever happens, they would like to have something special to drive around. And that was the point when we also strengthens our, let's say, relationship with Pagani, where we are developing engines and powertrains for race cars. And other brands and other companies actually approached us, and we approached them. And for that, we started being more, I wouldn't say diverse, but being more independent on different companies now. And this has grown, but at the end, in 2022, you could say, we also thought, okay, how can we demonstrate that not talking all the time about the projects of others? I mean, you can understand that I feel a bit unsecure explaining what we have done from Mercedes, because that was kind of the job to do, and we were asked to do that, and also for others. But now we wanted to just showcase what we are capable for and being kind of free to tell about. And that's why we came up with the idea, okay, we have to build something where we can explain and where we can showcase our capabilities.
And so what was chosen?
It was a mixture, because we thought about, okay, if we do a race car, it's going to be kind of, we don't want to, let's say, interact in the business we are doing. We don't want to go on the road car as a brand new brand. So it was kind of, okay, we want to tell our story. We want to showcase our capabilities. We want a product which is usable also on the street because of these security, or let's say these uncertainties of what's going on with racing. And so at the end, that formed the product. It's what we have right now. It's a new road car, but it's not a complete new thing. It is a complete new thing, don't get me wrong, but it's not a complete new brand or complete new story. It also helps us to explain where we are coming from, DTM and motor racing and touring cars. And and it is a supercar, a hypercar.
And okay, so we've now got the HWA Evo.
Correct.
And what were you aiming for with that car? Like some sort of resto mods are, okay, I want to make the best technology that was available when the car was launched. Or some are like, oh, I want to make as if that car was made right now with the latest stuff now. What has been your approach and sort of ethos behind it?
I think we did something which you normally also would do. If you start a product, you would ask people who would buy it. And that's how we started. We were talking to 10 potential customers and told them, okay, this is our idea. And they also helped us to change it, because the initial idea was a little bit different. They helped us to change it and create a product where we were believing in that people would like to buy it. And it was more or less, okay, I need something special. I don't want to have a mass production car, which is individualized or changed or something. I really would like to have something special. I need to have a nice driving behavior, because this makes a car special for most of those 10 people. They told us about, okay, what are their favorite cars and why do they like them? And that was kind of mixed together. And we figured out that especially an electric powertrain was not really on the bigger wish list. It was 1 out of 10 asked for, are you doing an electric car? We said, if you like us to do so, we would do. But 9 people said, no, I wouldn't buy it if it's electric. So these kind of conversations, they helped us a lot to create the product.
And how did you decide on, what sort of spec type situation have you gone for? Have you gone for as light as possible with the most horsepower and the most downforce stickiness, or,
No, I think what is special on the car is that we implemented a lot of our DNA. So it means, okay, we want to have a low weight, which we like as engineers, because then this is something very important overall. We wanted to make the car safe on the other side. So having a new car, you see, they are heavier, but that's because they are safer. you have to walk around and work around this and to find a good balance. Then we want to have a car which is having good driving behavior. So we don't want to have a heavy front end or a heavy rear end or something. So we want to have it nicely balanced, which actually caused a big problem on the 4-door sedan, which was developed in the late 70s. Engine, gearbox in the front, everything in the front, very light rear. So you don't get the balance. So, and all these kind of ideas, I think most of them were technically driven, but always been, let's say, went through with those customers. And at some point, it's not only 10 people we were talking to, it was 20, 25, even more. And then first customers, because these people were kind of involved and said, hey, what are you doing here is great. I just want to be part of it. And that was in the beginning. So, I think if you ask too many people, then it's also not easy. But having people who are really willing to being involved, and they give you good feedback, and they give you good answers, and that's where engineers can work with.
And is the car, does it start from an old chassis?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are not buying one of the rare 500 Evo 2 original cars. We start from a normal chassis, let's say. They've been built in between 84 and 93. So there's a lot of cars available. There's almost more than 1.6 million cars being built. And this is the base, but we're just using a little piece of it. And it's a big new development. So we're using some of the chassis, but that's it. Door handles, a wiper arm, everything else is bespoke.
Everything else is new.
Yeah.
And is it all, a lot of the body shell carbon fiber?
Everything, yeah, because we kind of scale the car in all dimensions. There's only one surface being actually originally and being take over, and that's the C pillar. So this bow from the A to the C pillar, that's steel metal of the original chassis, and that's untouched surface. Everything else has been modified in carbon.
Yeah, because I saw your car at Goodwood this year.
Yes.
And you had was it an Evo 2 next to it? And I looked at your car and was like, oh, that looks awesome. And then I looked at the Evo 2 and was like, it looks kind of old now. Like the two next to each other is crazy.
I mean, to be fair, the car was designed in the 70s, right? And then the Evo, okay, that was designed later on, but you cannot change the car itself. So it was, there's a lot of adaptations on the original 190 Evo 2, but it still has all the original surfaces and So and it is 40 years ago, or even longer. Yeah.
So what have you gone for in terms of powertrain?
So we came up with the same idea than we already had a couple of years ago, looking for an S-Class engine and using that. And that's actually the base. It's a V6 bi-turbo engine we're going to modify with a dry sump and with a lot of different other components to make it actually fit in the car, to run it. So we are developing an own ECU and all the things to manage the engine around it. The whole drivetrain, it's not only the engine, it's also the gearbox. It's a 6-speed manual in the back as a transaxle gearbox.
Okay.
The gearbox also covers all the auxiliaries like the starter, the alternator, the air condition compressor, steering pump. Everything is in the back of the car, in the gearbox integrated, the clutch. So these are the, let's say, racing DNA we are implementing. So that was done in all DTM cars already in the past to have nice weight distribution of almost 50-50. You want to have a low center of gravity. These kind of things are actually implemented into that HWA Evo.
And suspension? I presume the suspension is not the same as a standard car.
No, it's completely new. So since we have decided to really built new front frame. So the whole front end is completely new, made out of aluminum, the rear end as well. So the inner chassis is steel. You have a front end, a rear end. And since we have developed them from scratch, we have different energy absorbing. We are actually preparing to have also crash testing the car. And this has been simulated here, what we also can do in-house. And due to that, we have a lot of freedom. And we decided, okay, we're going to go with a double wishbone in the front and in the rear. And we design our own suspension kinematics. And same to the electric. It completely started from a white sheet of paper and said, okay, what do we need on this car? Do we actually need brake assistance? No, it's not mandatory. Do we need this and that? No. And so I wouldn't say we do a digital detox or something. There is digital components in the car, but it's actually, it's going to be a driver's car. And people who decided to be part of that, they actually appreciate also the work we have done in the past on the racing. And they want to have the feeling into that, but it's still a road car and it's not a race car, which is street league.
Oh yeah, and are they all going to have? Do they have back seats?
Yes, you have 4 doors, 4 seats. It's kind of small, I mean, looking at a 190 closer today, it's a very small car. It's not as a C-Class today. A C-Class today is much bigger. Yeah. So, but you have space for 4 people and luggage and
Yeah, and have you gone down like in terms of options and stuff? Is there quite a long list of options and customizations, or?
In customizations, yes, because we want also the clients to create their own car and being unique even in the 100 cars we are building. But the option list is something which is not totally crazy because the car is equipped already with a lot of nice features. And if you want to have a more track-orientated car, then you can choose some kind of a track package. If you want to have visible carbon, which people actually also requests, then you can choose for that. But it's more or less our taste and direction of the car. It's not something if somebody wants a ceramic brake, we will have a ceramic brake. You don't need it because the steel brake is big enough and will cover everything. But if you really want to push that will be available, these kind of things. And we're also looking for special things, to be fair, which an OEM, a big mass production manufacturer, cannot really offer. So,
yeah. And that seems to me, definitely with a lot of this sort of projects, one of the most interesting parts for a lot of customers is like, you can change stuff. You can make this different. Whereas you've only got a few options with a certain major manufacturer.
No, I mean, to change the car, that's something we would like to. I mean, first of all, we would like to involve the people into the process, and we do already. So they are part of, okay, what do we do next? What are the plans? How do we test the car? What's happening? And that's actually a progress where they actually attend on, which is also outstanding, I would say. Then actually modifying the car and doing a spec hasn't been done so far because we would like to build the first cars in the beginning of 26. But latest in the middle of next year, we have to have a setup where we can actually spec a car with a client. And we are currently working on a configurator, but it's more or less something you would also experience. So I think this is something we are working on right now.
Yeah. And have you set any sort of benchmarks for how? Yeah. I don't know. What are you measuring it against in any way?
That's very complicated, but we actually, as we are engineers, we came up with a huge document which refers to cars in special behaviors. So talking about noise, vibration, hardness, or whatever called NVH, we thought, okay, there is one end which is an S-Class or a Rolls-Royce or something. On the other end, you have BAC mono or maybe an Ariel Atom or something really which is just very loud. Or a barely street legal race car. And where do we want to be? we don't want to be the S-Class, but we also don't want to be that. So looking at these kind of things, we actually have been looking at, I would say, 20 different points or even more to compare with other cars. It's not that we see one car as a competitor, because it's very different making a car look and feel out of the 80s and adapting the style, and also honoring that, but having a new car which is more or less a race DNA, but it's still street legal and we want to drive it on the street. It's not that it's uncomfortable or something, right? You want to drive it.
Yeah. So where do you think whereabouts along that scale of Atom to S-Class? Are you aiming for somewhere in the middle, or?
That was just the idea of, okay, how we classify the noise, for example. Yeah. But there is also like other cars where we see in terms of performance, in terms of weight, in terms of power to weight ratio. So there is a lot of interesting cars we had a look at, and we think, okay, in terms of power to weight ratio, we want to end up here because this is a good idea. In terms of these kind of things, we want to be here. So yeah, there's 20 cars we had a look at minimum, and try to squeeze out what we can use out of them.
Yeah. And what are the cars going to weigh? Spec dependent, but loosely.
Yeah, definitely. It's also a topic, because if you talk about weight, what is the weight you see in a magazine or you see online? People have to understand, because in the past it was kind of a dry weight, which means this car has no fluids, it's not ready to drive. That's the weight. At some point, the EU or other authorities change it into a weight, which means this is the weight where you can start the engine, you can drive, and the driver is inside, because that's more realistic. So looking at the dry weight of the 190 Evo 2 out of 1992, it was 1,350 kilos. To achieve that, saying our car weighs 1,350 kilos today, it has to be much lighter to achieve that, because you have to have a driver of 75 kilo. You have to fill up the fuel cell by 90%. You have to have all brake cooling fluids, oil, everything inside. So, okay, but to give you an answer, our idea is to keep it as low as possible, but not sacrificing with crazy stuff. It's not going to be crazy on the weight, but we want to have a nice power to weight ratio, and we believe that this car weighs lower all the production cars you actually see right now. But that's the concept, definitely. So
you're not at that point where you're taking circular saws to every single
no, I mean,
object.
At some point, you're really looking at these things, and I cannot really stop the engineers doing that, because that's what they train for, right? So sometimes we have to be careful and say, hey, why are you doing here? Yeah, I'm designing this and this, but then you say, okay, that's a little bit too much, because you save a couple of grams only on the bracket, but that's in their head. And at some point, you cost-wise also have to stop that and say, okay, make it a little bit less complicated, and then we can source this not only from the specialist, but also from another resource with high quality. So yeah, that's kind of the trade-off you sometimes have to have.
Yeah, and are these going to be, I guess, amongst the ones you know of, or the sort of ethos of like a track car, or mainly predominantly road, or what's like the split in terms of what do you think the aims are?
I mean, since we are developing the suspension, looking at the suspension is more or less, it's kind of a double wishbone system with a very good shock absorber system, which is actually only developed for that car. We're going to do that on a rig, and also the aerodynamics, everything is kind of developed. It's not just, okay, let's see what's happening. So it's more or less. So I think it's definitely a car which you can use on country roads, which you can use on canyon roads, on nice roads, and actually where you want to feel the road. You can also go on the highways, but at the end, it's more or less you want to be interacting all the time. It's not that, okay, I do cruise mode and go for 500 kilometers or miles or whatever. What could be done in effect, I guess, but it's more or less built for, okay, I want to have some fun. I want to feel the car. And if I like, I can also take it to a track.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. And 4 seats. Not many of these types of cars have 4 seats.
Correct. Yeah. That's something special, I guess. And also having a transaxle gearbox on a 4-seater is something very, very rare. Yeah.
Yeah. A bit different. And so first customer cars you're aiming for 2026?
Correct. So we are actually start doing the build already, purchasing the base cars and so on in middle of next year. Because we're going to build 1 car per week. That means you have to do a lot of things in parallel. We are doing this right now with other cars. So our peak is about 120 cars per year without shifting. That's what the company can do. But I think 50 cars of that product, because you have a lot of individualizations and we do all the painting and everything in-house. So if we can organize that quite well, and that's the plan, we can have 1 car per week built, but you really have to prepare and do things in parallel. And first cars, and then we do it for 2 years because we're going to build 100 cars.
And then, okay, so 2 years, 100 cars, bish, bash, bosh. And then I know we're quite far into the future. Are there any thoughts of have you gone, oh, this has gone quite well, maybe some other projects?
No, definitely. I mean, it's already now in our head because we almost finished the chassis, or not the chassis, but the overall design of the car, the construction. Because right now we are in the ordering process of the first components for prototypes. So that means the engineers are actually on a high level because they have to develop and do drawings and finish up their design. But at some point, the curve goes down, and then we need another project for them. So that's definitely the plan. There is. It doesn't make sense to do that only one time and then turn around. What do we do next? So there is a plan to do multiple of those cars, and we're just starting here with the first product.
No, it's the first time. Yeah, when I saw it at Goodwood, this looks cool.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
it's a cool looking thing. Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's pretty much all the questions I've got. Are there any, what's your favorite feature on the Evo, or like your favorite bit of design or technology that you've got in there?
I think I like the fact that we all decided here together that we want to do an outstanding product, and that we actually decided to not only modify a car and make it look nice or something, that we actually rethought the whole idea of restomodding. We don't believe that we do a restomod compared to other restomods. We believe we build a new car here because the efforts we are doing and the engineering and working with high-level companies like Bosch and whatever is a different story, we believe. And changing the 4-door sedan out of the 80s into a very good driving machine, that is the overall idea around the project, and that's actually what fascinates me a lot here.
Yeah, because I guess on a sort of basic, it's not basic, but I guess on a basic engineering point of view, of you've not done the thing that a lot of people have done, which is, okay, we're going to uprate suspension, uprate engine, uprate, everything, make the whole thing out of carbon fiber. There's a lot of that. You've gone, okay, hang on, the layout's not quite right. We want to put the gearbox in the back. Like, we want to redesign all of the suspension completely different, like all of these elements. So quite a...
Yeah, we are actually turning this thing upside down and doing everything new. And so, it's electronically, powertrain, chassis. It looks like a 190, which has been pumped up a little bit, but it's a new car.
It's a totally different thing. And how much do they cost? How much are they going to be, roughly?
It starts at 714,000 plus tax. But most of the cars are actually reserved so far. I'm very happy about this. And it's a very nice project. And again, as you just said, it's not just the first and last one. It's the first HWA car, but there's going to be more of them.
More Mercedes?
You never know. I mean,
Never
you
know.
never know.
Okay. Probably not a 964 911, I'm guessing.
No, I don't think so. No.
Who knows? No. Right. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Me personally, definitely. Yeah, the car was not the best, but the driving trip started with 2 friends of mine in Hamburg. I just got my license 1 week or so, and we wanted to visit friends 1 hour far away from Hamburg, but we ended up doing a trip for a couple of weeks, actually driving through Europe, France, Spain, Italy. Nice trip. That was done in a Opel Kadett Cabrio, which was kind of a shitty car, but it was good experience, definitely. Yeah.
Can you think of any particular highlights of that trip?
The highlight definitely was the first 1 hour of driving. So actually, the car was owned by a mother of a friend of mine, and my friend said, "Okay, I'm gonna show you how my mother and we think we should treat the car for the rest of the trip." And he just drove very slowly, and we decided, okay, we have to convince him to change that. And we changed, actually. We pushed the car quite to the limit. And we had a good trip with that car, although it was not the fastest one.
If you could only drive one sports car for the rest of your life, and you unlimited value, and you've got like a €5,000 sort of cheap thing on the side, what would it be?
The €5,000 on the side, or
both?
Definitely the HWA Evo. I mean, we are building here a dream car, I think, not only for me but also for others. And the one on the side, maybe kind of a BMW 5 Series E34 or something. I once purchased a car like this. It was just good to drive and simple.
Yeah. Nice. What do you think is the most undervalued car at the moment? And you can't say HWA Evo.
I think it's every car where there's a lot of engineering, a lot of efforts going in. But I personally think, there is a lot of hypercars, and I know now experience on my own that this is kind of a lot for a company which is way smaller than big OEMs building a car. So that's why I think most of the hypercars we see, like whatever Pagani, Koenigsegg, whatever it is, although those cars are very expensive to most of the people, they are undervalued because it's so much effort for those small companies to achieve that, what others doing with 100 times more money and 100 times more people. Yeah.
When you compare a big OEM, whether it's Ferrari, Porsche, etc., and they come out with their 918 or something for £1 million or whatever it's going to cost, the development money they've spent on that just is so much more than a small company can do.
And they have those big resources, right? They have the knowledge, the resources, the people. For sure, it has to be some point of a business case. Sometimes it's not, probably, but at the end, it's brand marketing or whatever they can just say. But in these smaller companies, it has to have a business case. It has to be right. People will look even more detailed on the product. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard space. What's the most interesting car to you at the moment? Could be technology, Googling, anything.
I mean, what I really also would say is looking up to the transition of Bugatti and saying, okay, we got to do even more mechanically. We're going to remove our turbo systems. We're going to be even more, looking at a Bugatti Tourbillon or something, which is not there yet, I know, but that's definitely something to look up on.
Yeah, that was a very cool move in my eyes, the way they've gone about that. It was right on, just on the money of what they should be doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's because maybe we are focusing on these markets. And I mean, this is not something comparable to the Evo, definitely. But it's interesting to look at what these companies are doing.
Yeah, totally. Right, final question. 5-car garage, unlimited value. What are you having?
Okay, I haven't really prepared for that. Jens said, "Oh, you have to prepare." I said, "Okay." I mean, definitely, I'm in Porsche City in Stuttgart, so there would be GT2 RS, GT3 RS, something like this.
Something like that, yeah.
Also, something which I also definitely really like is a GT3 Touring, which is not really showing off that much, but it's proper car.
Nice.
Then we are talking about AMGs because this is where we are coming from.
Yeah.
I would definitely go for a 560 SEC AMG with a 6-liter.
Oh, yeah.
W126. Also 500E or E60 out of that time, W124. Really cool, nice sedans or even a wagon. Fantastic car. Everything else would be more or less special. I couldn't really pick a car which is now free for purchase or something. It's not that I say, I would like to have the F80 or I need to have this, or unfortunately not. But
what do you think of the F80?
I mean, it's you cannot really complain that much about what Ferrari is doing. I mean, they want to bring a hypercar and they want to a supercar and they want to fulfill the rules and everything, and that's how it ends up. Unfortunately, I think we should ask our politicians and the society to accept that there is a lot of just a few people would like to have something different, and so why not? You cannot really blame them for what they have done, right? I mean, you can discuss about the design or whatever, but the sound the car gives, the performance, it's not what you would like to have, but that's the reality. That's the rules.
Yeah, it is. It feels harsh that, and I don't know whether they do, because from a Ferrari point of view, they are just absolutely killing it in terms of as a brand at the moment. But you compare like what another small company, let's say what Koenigsegg is allowed to produce or what Pagani is allowed to produce and sell, Ferrari are not allowed to do that.
That's true. That's something. It is true. I mean, that's regulations,
it is.
Right? Yeah.
It is. Right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you and give you a background or feedback on our car, which we really push for, I can tell you. There's a lot of things going on. That's why we were kind of busy to find an apartment here.
Yeah. When so it'll be a while until there'll be videos of someone driving one at some point, but I guess maybe a year?
No,
I don't know.
No, very soon. So right now we are, as I said, we are purchasing the components. We are building up the cars. Yeah. Let's say beginning of February, there will be the first prototypes, and then from there on, we're gonna try and drive them as much as we can.
Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing some around for sure.
Thank you.
I know there's not going to be that many of them, but I'm sure I'll see one.
We will make sure you see them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.